labor, and the expression of worth.
The Son of Man has no place to rest his head. Christ made manifest in the homeless, the exiled, the outcast, the marginalized, the broken, the exhausted, the demoralized, rejected, the hurting ones, those we have such a difficult time seeing in ourselves, so much so that we often consider them to be just that, them, those bums, those homeless folks. You have redeemed my soul from the pit of emptiness. You have redeemed my soul from death. Thanks, Dawn. Thanks, Lori. Lovers of the Word, learn to labor and to wait. Longfellow. You too can be famous from the comfort of your own home. All you need is your third eye on that cellophone. Do your dance, write your meme, become the guru on the people's screens. Take your camera to the woods, Amazon's consumer goods. All labor is profitable. Thank God for this notebook and this Oregon beach in July. Let me take my boots off now and dig my toes into the sand. These beaches in the summertime suit a traveling man. And there go the toes, digging in like those sand crabs do sometimes when the water rushes back out. These waves here at Whale's Head Viewpoint seem to swing like the hand of a clock onto the beach. Before I pulled in here and made the inclined march down the cliff to this beach, I was thinking about those ladies at Fullness Christian Fellowship. All those years ago, these ladies approached us after the service that we held in the conference room at the Four Seasons Inn. And when I say us, I'm talking about me and Chris Moore and Carol.
Of Montezuma Castle. On the top floor, the elderly village lookout keeps his solitary vigil.
My ex-wife, she was in that band too. Those ladies were holding a Hillsong CD. Those Australians who were singing out the good news back in the 90s. This is what Jesus sounds like, those ladies said. This is what those ladies said, having been absolutely terrified by the blues and jazz influenced music they'd been hearing coming from the stage ever since I got saved. Yeah, I got saved in their little church birthing experiment. Having just come from jazz school, there was hardly anything more square that I'd heard than those Hillsong folks. That was the end of our Love Supreme inspired worship music. We played more Hillsongs after that day. A couple of years later, they would ask us to put away our instruments altogether, hold microphones in our hands, and sing to tracks. Those spirit-filled Oklahomans must have truly been appalled and disappointed by our music. Strangely enough, however, those Hillsongs still hold a place in my heart today. I need you more than words can say. Shout to the Lord, all the earth, let us sing. Power and majesty, praise to the King. Those waves out there are disrupted by a massive island rock. Maybe that's why they seem to come in from different directions and swing like the hand of a clock. I do love to soak up the sun through the overcast sky. You can still get burnt, of course, especially because that breeze and its cooling effect. Of course, I can't say in what way my life would be different now were it not for that little church that those folks in Edmond, Oklahoma decided to start. At the time, it seemed like Jesus had birthed that church just for me, to save my life. but those two pastors were praying for great crowds of people. They hoped that I was the first of many to come. All of us, apparently, still lost in our own self-important delusions. This is my third writing session today. The cool wind is blowing on my shirtless torso, and my feet are buried in the sand. Giant rocks are pushing up from the beach, and the cliffs are rich with cedars. It was a long march down that hillside, more than I expected. I haven't played an instrument since the Cottonwood Meadow campsite my first day in Oregon. Utah was just hot, and I screamed and cried myself through that state, literally. I deserve death, the chief of all sinners type stuff. Thing is, it felt right. It felt authentic. That text from Carla was devastating after I felt close enough to Stacy Lynn that I just wanted to hold her all night long. I'm ridiculous with women. That's all there is to it. And then there's Mark. I don't even want to put that down on paper. Shit. There's a little boy running like a madman where water meets the sand. The seagulls are singing like they know something. Those Oklahomans on 12th Street took my Godin and my journals. Goddamn. Anyway, John Coltrane's Love Supreme was sacred music to me. And that made a whole lot more sense after I met Jesus. And that's why I still tell the story about those three ladies approaching us with that Hillsong CD. If that sun comes out from behind that haze, I swear I won't be here another minute more. I was still 20 years old when I got back from basic training. And as I've mentioned before, it didn't take any armed conflict for me to receive a sufficient trauma communication from the United States Army. 10 weeks with Drill Sergeant Goins and Drill Sergeant White was quite enough for me. Now there's 4 women in bikinis walking right in front of me. These words in pencil will be my abstinence practice right now as their toes dig into the sand. Enough said. God, that was difficult. God, am I hungry. When I finished that 10 weeks at Fort Sill, in the sickening heat of the Oklahoma summer, I was sufficiently traumatized. The college education that I'd become willing to sacrifice my summer for made less sense to me than before I'd left. It was May 12th when I turned myself in to the federal authorities to attend their 8-week re-education seminar in Lawton, Oklahoma. When I came back, I could do 60 solid push-ups, and I'd also had some inner demons woke up in me. Drill Sergeant Hilliard, he's the one who screamed at us in the shower. He, of course, was fully clothed, and we wore nothing but our shower shoes. I think that teaching moment was just a little too much like the naked humiliation ceremony that my own father had gifted to me in my shower at home one day when I was a kid. An act that he still justifies because he was defending my little brother from the violence that I'd laid on him. And that's the truth. When I was in 3rd grade, I wrote some weird shit in an assigned journal. It looked like to my teachers that I might be enduring abuse at home. They made an inquiry. The story I'd written wasn't exactly true, so the inquiry stopped short of any further prying. I felt quite embarrassed. I was a creepy little liar, willing to say anything just to make the uncomfortable investigation into our private lives come to a stop. Now, those women in bikinis are laid out on their towels to the north. Just keep writing, Trav. Good God, am I lonely. My van's not big enough to share the space with a dog, and I'm not even sure that my heart is big enough for a dog. I often feel like such an outcast, averting my eyes from everyone. Don't let them see how hungry you are, Trav. That's a sure way to get marked as dangerous. Keep your eyes on your work. Maybe a dog will need some help one day, and it will just make sense to invite him in. So, yeah, it was after Army basic training that I lost my ability to focus on music because I was so scared of what was coming up from inside of me. So if you need to talk to me about responsibility or correct me for my irresponsibility, we can have that conversation. I can certainly have that conversation with you. I can certainly speak of what it has been like in my life to exhaust myself in my efforts to be responsible. And when I say exhaust myself, I just mean come to the very end of my capacity to function in the modes that others needed me to function in. God bless us all. What women want from me, I've already given it all away. Security, a nest, consistent employment. The only people I was willing to do that act for was my 3 children. I'd have left their mother 5 years into our marriage had we not already had 3 kids. I just accidentally looked over there again toward that big rock where those 4 women are now all gathered around something of common interest at their center. And the sun is still mostly shielded by this Oregon overcast. They say you miss the sun after a while. I say, prove it to me. The heat is a killer for me these days. My head was freshly shaved, and my shower shoes were still squeaky new when Drill Sergeant Hilliard was screaming at us in the shower room there in 2nd Platoon's barracks. He yelled, and we scurried. It reminded me, even at the time, of those movies I saw where the Nazis herded the naked Jews into the gas chambers, masses of fearful, choking flesh. I guess I just didn't understand what I was getting into in coming to basic training. I wanted to believe that it would somehow be an exercise in discipline and honor. I really did think that. I thought that if I showed up strong and worked hard, that I would be uplifted. But I wasn't. That's not how I felt. I don't think that my fellow soldiers took it nearly as hard as I did, but by the end of the 2nd week, I was crying in formation. And I guess that's what basic training is for, to weed out the guys that are going to start crying in formation. But I didn't quit. Even when they shamed me in front of the platoon, I kept going. I kept going, living out the next 8 weeks, carrying that shame. I think the shame, the disgrace, was already in me. Basic training just magnified it. Me and Stacy Lynn climbed a mountain together recently. I certainly will crush over a woman who will climb to the top of a mountain with me. That was nice. But I felt heartbroken when we parted ways. However, I think it was her, in part, that inspired this trip to the West Coast to see the Redwood Forest. Stacy Lynn is from Nebraska. She always knew she had to leave, and so one day she did. She packed up her life and moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. I like strong women, and I'm finally strong enough myself to meet them in my strength, which doesn't mean that I don't crush over them. I forget that the women are over there in their bikinis until I do a natural surrounding scan and I find them again. Eyes on work, Trav. Eyes on work. Dear God, Trav. Eyes on work. Yes, I'm a man. I'm a biological human being, and the man in me is still looking for closeness, a mate even. It's just part of me. It's just I don't know how to make that shit stop. Anyway, when I came back from Army basic training, I haven't even contacted Stacy Lynn since I made a fool of myself that day. I have to make a fool of myself, apparently, for women. I don't think I was ever brave enough to make a fool of myself right from the beginning, like I just did with Stacy Lynn. I think it's better this way. More honest. What do you think, Stacy? Oh, dear God. Yeah, I did crush over you. As I was saying, when I came back from Army basic training, I was fast approaching 21 years old, and I really don't think I had any clue what a deeply wounded human being I was. Demoralized, cynical, angry, insecure. I hoped that making it through basic training had made me tougher, but I did not feel tougher. I felt less capable, more sensitive, less equipped. And when music school started again in the fall, I struggled with fears that I'd stuffed down since childhood. My girlfriend left me, and I dropped out of school after reading Jack Kerouac's On the Road. Yeah, I read Jack Kerouac's On the Road while drinking wine and eating a breakfast burrito one day. Not a burrito that was made for breakfast, just a burrito at breakfast time and wine. And I felt the calling in Jack Kerouac's book. However, I didn't get on the road until just now. What I did after reading Jack Kerouac's On the Road, drinking wine and eating a burrito, was I got married. I gave my life to Christ and got married. And I gave my life to her as Christ gave his life for the church in the best way I could, in the best ridiculous way that I could. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I didn't get on the road. I found Jesus and I got married. And if you've been following my story, well, you know how that went. Beautiful children, beautiful children. My hand is extremely tired. Hours of writing today, more later.